Hello, I'm Justine Murphy, Senior Editor at Laser Focus World. Thanks for joining us for this quick chat, part of Laser Focus World's PhotonicsNXT. Right now, I'm talking with Dr. Steve Buckley, Business Unit General Manager for Applied Systems at Ocean Insight. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Justine. Glad to be here.
And so Ocean Insight is known for modular and flexible spectroscopy systems, particularly for the laboratory. Are these systems also useful for industrial measurements?
Yeah, they sure are. In fact, most people know Ocean, as you said, for the laboratory equipment that we've supplied for years and years around photonics, spectrometers, optics, fiber optics. But in reality, almost half of our business is supplying OEM spectrometers for industrial measurements. These are packaged by many of our customers into devices that are used all the time on the factory floor. And so that's an interesting part of our business. And just recently, as you noted, we started the Applied Systems business unit within Ocean. And our mission is to focus directly on end customers with industrial problems. And so some of the markets that we serve are the consumer electronics market is a good example, the recycling market. In the consumer electronics market, we actually make color measurements at high rate of speed to verify color of both liquids and of products for quality assurance. And then in the recycling market, we do a lot with scrap sorting, to be honest. So there's a lot of spectroscopy, obviously, in industry and a lot of use for it in industry. And we like to play in that arena. And the modular aspect of what we do is interesting because every industrial project ends up a little bit different. It might need a different resolution, different light source. And so because we supply already all of these modular components, we can pretty easily configure a hardened system. It can be IP67 rated. That's, you can pour water on it, things like that, dust environments. We can configure that in a very easy way. So it's our modularity actually works to our advantage. Once we harden the system for an industrial environment, we can play Legos and get the right hardware in our customers' hands.
Okay. Well, what spectroscopic methods are most suited for industrial measurements, and why is that?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. A lot of there's a lot of penetration of near infrared in, say, food measurements, very useful for measuring, say, protein or carbohydrate or fat. And so whether you're looking at dairy or meat, near infrared is very useful for those kinds of measurements. We have also employed, besides our traditional colorimetric measurements, which are great for just measuring color, we've employed a lot of Raman spectroscopy for, say, process analytical control. So both in the pharma industry and biopharma, looking at particular endpoint detection. So when you have a pharmaceutical biopharma process, you might want to know when the reaction is complete or something like that, or just maybe know the concentration in a particular solution. And then another personal favorite of mine, if some people watching this may actually know this about me, is that I'm particularly enamored of LIBS spectroscopy, laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy, and we employ that in the scrap industry and also in the oil and gas industry, looking at real-time concentration of everything from earthen geological materials to, say, aluminum light element scrap. To type the scrap so that it can be properly recycled. If you have a pile of aluminum that's all different alloys and you mix it together, it turns out you can't actually recycle it because some of the alloys are higher in one element and some in another. Mix it all, you get a mush. And so we sort it into by element to help our recyclers basically be able to do more efficient recycling. So those are some of them. So really NIR, Raman, and LIBS is where we like to play. And those are probably the ones that can help the most because they're relatively fast, relatively sensitive, and they can deal with a high material throughput, which is usually one of the requirements in an industrial environment.
Okay.
So,
what value can spectroscopy provide as it penetrates into industrial markets?
oh, this is a great question. I really think that as we think about onshoring manufacturing, reshoring manufacturing back into North America and Europe, one of the things we have to think about is efficiency in the factory. And we have to think about, real-time quality metrics and things like that. Spectroscopy can provide all of those things: incoming material inspection, quick assessment of process viability. So if your process is going off the rails, sooner rather than later. And then it can also provide endpoint detection. So those are some of the things that we look at and our customers are frequently asking us for. And so we run a process where we will typically pilot something in the lab, and then we'll talk about how, in detail, how do they need to make the measurement. It's often 24/7, or at least for a full workday. It's typically has fluctuating temperatures, maybe in the factory, things that you don't find in the laboratory. They need to interface that to their factory automation system. So they need a particular feed of information that's going to match with their own process. So if we can feed the spectroscopic processes and the data into that factory automation system, they get real-time information about how their process is running. And that's exciting from an efficiency standpoint, from a quality standpoint. And typically we find that the payback for this is under a year, which usually makes everybody happy. Checks boxes for them in terms of their capital, their use of capital. And it's greatly satisfying for us to be able to help make a manufacturing process greener, safer, healthier, more efficient. So.
Oh, that's so great. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Justine. Great to be here.